Welcome back to the deep dive. You know how this works. You give us the sources, the dense filings, the industry reports, all of it, and we break it all down for you.
And today, we are attempting to map something truly complex.
I'd say so. We're looking at what is probably the most successful and maybe most complicated corporate structure in all of leisure travel, Carnival Corporation and Bullet.
And we have to be clear from the start. We're not just talking about a big cruise line. Not at all.
No.
The sources you sent over map out this Anglo-American corporate leviathan. It's a behemoth that controls, through its 9 main brands, something like 40% of the world's entire cruise fleet.
That number, 40%, it's just staggering. I think for most people, when you say Carnival, they picture the fun ships, you know?
Right, the bright colors, the water slides.
Exactly. But the reality we're diving into today is a multinational holding company that has spent 50 years just aggressively acquiring and consolidating centuries of maritime history.
And that's our mission here. We need to cut right through that complexity. We're going to distill how this company, which is both one and two entities at the same time, actually operates.
We'll look at what incredible historic brands it owns and, maybe more importantly, the really high-stakes challenges it's faced.
Oh, absolutely. Everything from, repeated environmental violations that led to record-breaking fines, all the way to the existential threat of the pandemic.
The complexity starts right away, though, just with its basic legal setup. It's not just unusual, it's one of the most unique corporate structures out there.
A dual-listed entity. It operates as one business, but it's legally split.
Split across 2 continents and 2 different stock exchanges.
It's fascinating because it's so deliberate. You have Carnival Corporation on the U.S. side. Legally, it's incorporated in Panama.
Which we'll definitely get back to.
Oh, yeah. Its operational headquarters are in Florida. It trades on the New York Stock Exchange, ticker is CCL, and it's part of the S&P 500.
And then running right alongside it, sharing everything, you have Carnival Pluck, the British side.
That's the UK-based entity listed on the London Stock Exchange, also trading as CCL, and it's in the FTSE 250 index.
So they have 2 separate legal identities, but they act as one single economic engine. And this wasn't just for convenience. You said it was deliberate. I'd say it was born out of pure necessity.
And that necessity is backed by, just staggering scale. The 2024 financials in the source material really drive this home.
Let's hit the numbers.
Okay, so the entity reported revenue of US $25.02 billion.
$25 billion.
And its total assets are knocking on the door of $50 billion. US $49.06 billion to be exact. And to run all of that, they employ around 100,000 people across the globe.
You're not looking at a travel company anymore. That's a multinational conglomerate with the economic clout of a small country.
Absolutely.
So let's start by unpacking that corporate plumbing. Because if you don't understand the dual-listed structure, you can't really appreciate how it's managed to dominate the globe.
It's the key to everything.
Okay, so when we look at the geography, it gets complicated fast. You've got the operational heart, the nerve center of Carnival Corporation in Doral, Florida.
Right, that's where all the North American cruise operations are really run from.
But then you have the headquarters for Carnival Planic over in Southampton, England, managing all the European brands.
But the detail that most people miss, and it's so critical, is the legal home. The main Carnival Corporation entity is legally domiciled in Panama.
And that is not an accident.
No, it's a huge strategic advantage.
Yeah.
Operating under a Panamanian flag of convenience, using their corporate law, it provides massive benefits.
We're talking about taxes, labor rules.
Compliance with certain maritime regulations. It's just a more flexible environment.
Right.
So you have this triangle, Panama for legal, Florida for operations, Southampton for Europe. It's the definition of strategic optimization.
And this whole thing, this Carnival Corporation in Flanic, it was formally born in 2003. And it wasn't a friendly merger. It was the result of a really hard-fought takeover of P&O Princess Cruises Plank.
And that battle is exactly why the dual-listed company, or DLC, structure exists. It was the solution.
What would have happened otherwise if they just, absorbed the UK company?
It would have been a disaster for the deal. You would have created massive tax problems for the UK shareholders.
Well,
it would have killed the UK trading status, and it probably would have run into huge regulatory hurdles in London.
So the DLC was the compromise.
It was the compromise that got the deal done. It let the takeover succeed.
And this compromise means that operationally, they are one company. Shared management, shared marketing, shared profits.
But legally, they stay separate. The documents show that Carnival Corp and Carnival Placking jointly own all the operating companies, the cruise lines themselves,
How do they hold that together?
through a really complex web of agreements.
Well,
The most important part is something called cross guarantees.
okay, what's that?
That's the glue.
Yeah.
Basically means if one side, say the UK entity, gets into financial trouble, the US entity is legally required to back it up and vice versa.
Ah, so it creates a unified front financially.
A unified front, exactly, while still allowing them to tap into two completely separate pools of investment capital. They get money from the NYSE and the LSE without forcing shareholders to switch jurisdictions.
And for a business that needs billions to build a single new ship, that access to capital is everything.
It's vital.
So to really feel the weight of this company, let's go back to those 2024 financials. It's more than just the big revenue number.
Right. The U.S. $25.02 billion in revenue is enormous, of course. It puts them in the absolute top tier of the global travel sector.
And it's profitable.
Very.
Hmm.
The operating income was U.S. $3.574 billion. That shows you the core business pricing tickets, managing costs across that huge portfolio is incredibly strong.
And that's all built on that massive asset base, just under $50 billion.
Right, $49.06 billion. And you have to remember what's in that number. It's the 93 ships, sure, but it's also the port infrastructure, the private islands.
The value of the brands themselves. Cunard's name alone is worth a fortune.
Which does bring up an interesting point about their balance sheet post-pandemic. While the assets are huge, the total equity reported was U.S. $9.251 billion.
Which is not a small number, but compared to $50 billion in assets.
It reflects the sheer amount of debt they had to take on to survive the shutdown. So while they made it through, a huge focus for leadership right now is managing those debt payments and building that equity position back up.
And that leadership still has a family connection, right?
It does. The CEO is Josh Weinstein, but the chairman is Mickey Arison, who's the son of the founder, Ted Arison. That family link really maintains a very specific long-term focus, even with all this corporate complexity.
And you can see that long-term focus in their real estate plans. Even with this globe-spanning legal structure, they're actually consolidating physically.
Yeah, that was a big announcement. They're moving all their North America team members into one single new headquarters in Miami-Dade County, the Waterford Business District.
And that's not happening tomorrow. It's scheduled to open in 2028.
Exactly. It shows they're planning for the long haul, trying to streamline the internal organization and make it more efficient, even while they keep all the benefits of the Panama domicile and the dual listing.
So it's operational cohesion on top of financial and legal complexity.
It's a perfect way to put it. The structure is a high-level corporate shield. Panama gives them regulatory flexibility. The DLC gives them maximum access to capital, and the new Florida HQ will give them management efficiency.
And that agility is exactly what let them build this empire in the first place. So how did this company, which is so perfectly engineered for global finance, actually start? It certainly wasn't with $50 billion in assets.
No, it was a much, much humbler beginning.
Like shift from the balance sheet to the boardroom battles. The history of Carnival is, it's a classic entrepreneurial story with this incredible moment of high-stakes risk.
The sources trace it all back to 1972. I was founded as Carnival Cruise Line by Ted Arison and a partner, Meshulam Riklis. They started with just one ship, an old one at that.
And it did not go well at first.
Not at all. It was a disaster. By 1974, just 2 years in, the company was drowning in debt. And this led to that legendary moment.
The $1 deal.
The $1 deal. Riklis was so desperate to get out that he sold his entire share of the company to Ted Arison for a single dollar.
Can you imagine? Arison was essentially betting a buck that he could take on all that debt and turn this sinking ship around.
It's an incredible amount of guts. And that $1 investment, of course, became the foundation for this entire $50 billion empire.
And his big idea was to pivot. He went after the mainstream mass market customer with the fun ship concept. It completely revolutionized the industry.
They proved they could scale it, built their first new ship, the Tropical, in the early 80s. But the real game changer wasn't a ship. It was a financial move.
The IPO, 1987.
The 1987 IPO on the New York Stock Exchange, that was the rocket fuel.
They only sold 20% of the company.
That's 20%. And it raised around $400 million. And that money wasn't for, new carpets on the ships. It was explicitly a war chest for acquisitions.
That's the moment. That's when Carnival stops being just a cruise line and starts becoming a holding company that owns cruise lines.
And they formalized it in 1993 by officially changing the name to Carnival Corporation. The acquisition spree that followed was all about dominating the market through segmentation.
It happened so fast. In 1989, they bought Holland America Line.
Yep, securing that premium, destination-focused part of the market. And with it, they got the Alaskan land tour business, which showed they were already thinking about vertical integration.
Then they went for the high end. Windstar, Seabourn.
And then, crucially, they expanded in Europe. They bought Costa Cruises, which was the leader in Italy, and the legendary Cunard Line.
So with that, they controlled everything from the budget-friendly fun ships all the way up to ultra-luxury. They were insulated from shifts in any one part of the market.
And all of that set the stage for the big one, the corporate battle royale for P&O Princess Cruises.
Which is what led directly to the dual-listed structure we've been talking about.
That period, from 2000 to 2003, is just essential. P&O Princess Cruises was a huge player in its own right. It had been spun off from the original P&O group.
And the original P&O dates back to 1837. They literally ran the world's first commercial cruise ships.
So Carnival wasn't just buying a competitor. They were trying to absorb the deepest, oldest lineage in the entire industry.
And P&O Princess had already agreed to merge with someone else.
With Carnival's #1 rival, Royal Caribbean.
So that's what made it a hostile takeover.
Exactly. Carnival just jumped in with a counteroffer, and they had a secret weapon. They offered better terms, specifically the promise of this new DLC structure.
And that was the key for the British shareholders.
It was everything. The British market had this deep sentimental attachment to P&O. The DLC structure was a way for them to get the financial benefit of the merger while keeping a separate London stock listing and protecting the independence of the classic UK brands like P&O Cruises.
That was a masterstroke. Instead of a simple American buyout, they proposed this complex but brilliant structure.
It neutralized all the regulatory fears, it won over the shareholders, and in 2003, they acquired P&O Princess. The unique structure we see today is the direct result of that successful hostile takeover.
And it instantly made them the dominant player in the world.
Doubled their fleet size overnight.
And they didn't just stop at buying cruise lines. In 2018, they made another interesting purchase, this time in infrastructure.
The White Pass and Yukon route. They bought it for US $290 million.
And this was pure vertical integration, right?
Totally. This wasn't about adding ships. It was about owning the port of Skagway, Alaska, owning the critical tourist railroad, owning the retail shops.
By owning the destination, they control the quality, the logistics.
And they capture 100% of the money their passengers spend there. It's brilliant.
But the sources also show that building an empire means you sometimes have to prune it. They've sold off brands, too.
Oh, for sure. They sold Windstar Cruises back in 2007. And more recently, just in 2023, they sold their share in a joint venture in China, Adora Cruises.
So it's not just about getting bigger, it's about constantly managing the portfolio.
It shows they're dynamic. They're willing to cut assets that don't fit their long-term global strategy. And the result of all this buying and selling is the incredible collection of brands they have today.
8 main consumer brands, all operating under this one entity, but each filling a very specific niche in the market.
It's a masterclass in segmentation. They've got 93 ships as of late 2024, and they have a ship for basically every demographic, every price point, and every nationality you can think of.
And to manage all that, they did a big internal shakeup in June 2023.
Yeah, they restructured. They created 6 new operational units, and each unit has full executive control over the brands in its portfolio. It's about making them more nimble.
So what are these units?
Well, you've got Carnival Cruise Line as its own unit, which makes sense. It's the biggest. Then you have Carnival Maritime, which handles the big European brands, AIDA and Costa.
Okay.
Then there's Carnival UK, which is crucial. It manages the 2 British heritage lines, Cunard and P&O Cruises, right out of Southampton.
Keeping that historical link.
Exactly. Then there's Holland America Group, based in Seattle, which runs Holland America, and the ultra-luxury Seabourn. And finally, Princess Cruises gets its own unit based in California.
So that structure guarantees that the experience is completely different depending on the brand. A passenger on Cunard expects a certain level of formality.
That would feel totally alien to a passenger on AIDA who's there for a casual German-speaking club atmosphere.
Let's dig into some of these brand histories, because this is where you really see the weight of what Carnival bought. These aren't just logos on a funnel.
No, they are living pieces of history.
Let's start with Cunard, the crown jewel. Founded in 1840, its whole reason for being was winning the first transatlantic mail contract.
It was all about speed and reliability, but it was also a matter of national pride. The sources say the British government actually subsidized their ships, like the Mauretania and Lusitania, just to make sure they were faster than the German ships.
And then during the Great Depression, they were forced to merge with their biggest rival,
White Star Line. the company that owned the Titanic. For a while, they were Cunard White Star Line before Cunard bought out the rest in 1949.
And today, they still operate the Queen Mary 2, which is the world's last true transatlantic ocean liner. Not a cruise ship, an ocean liner, built to handle the North Atlantic all year round.
When Carnival bought Cunard in 1999, they got all of that priceless heritage in one go.
Then you have a brand like Holland America Line. Founded in Rotterdam in 1871, its history is tied up with the great waves of immigration to the United States.
And their story is one of smart evolution. They started as both cargo and passenger, but in 1973, they went all in on cruising.
Why was that?
The rise of container shipping. It made their old cargo business obsolete, so they wisely ditched it to focus only on leisure travel.
And they have that famous tradition, all their ships have names ending in "dam."
Right, the Rotterdam, the New Amsterdam. It's a core part of their brand identity that Carnival have been very careful to maintain since they bought them in '89.
And the European brands have their own unique stories. Ada is a really interesting one.
Its origins are wild. It actually started as part of the state-owned shipping company of East Germany back in 1952.
So Carnival, through the P&O merger, now owns a brand that started behind the Iron Curtain.
And has been completely repurposed for the modern German holiday market. It's almost entirely focused on German-speaking passengers. The language on board is German, the food is German, the whole vibe is German.
Which is a stark contrast to the formality of Cunard.
Totally different worlds.
Oh.
And that's the genius of their segmentation.
We should probably also clarify the whole P&O situation because it can get confusing.
Yes, good point. So there are three P&O entities to remember. There's P&O Cruises, the brand. It has the oldest heritage in the world, dating back to 1837, and it serves the British market.
Okay, so that's the cruise line itself.
Right. Then there was P&O Princess Cruises Piatek. That was the big company that Carnival acquired in that 2003 hostile takeover.
And the original P&O was the 19th century steamship company that started it all.
Exactly. When you put this whole portfolio together, you see a company that didn't just buy ships. It bought history, it bought culture, and it bought access to very specific markets.
It's an incredible portfolio. But they aren't just resting on that history. The sources show they are betting billions on the future.
Big time. Which takes us to what they're building next.
If that was the history they acquired, this next part is the future they're building, and it starts on land. For a company this big, controlling the destination is just as important as controlling the ship.
That's where the private islands come in.
Yeah.
It's all about controlling the guest experience from start to finish. You eliminate all the variables of dealing with third-party ports.
The logistics, the quality of vendors, security.
And you capture all the revenue. The sources point to four big ones. You've got Princess K in the Bahamas, used by Princess and Carnival.
And Half Moon Cay, also in the Bahamas.
Right, originally a Holland America spot.
Yeah.
And they're planning to build a pier there, which is a big deal. It means bigger ships can dock directly instead of using smaller tender boats.
They also have Amber Cove in the Dominican Republic, and then there's the huge new project.
Celebration Key. This is their new private resort on Grand Bahama. It's a massive investment, a whole controlled ecosystem just for their passengers.
These private spots are so valuable because you can build an entire itinerary around them that isn't vulnerable to, say, geopolitical problems in other ports.
You create your own demand. And that confidence is reflected in their ship orders. They have 7 new ships under construction or on order.
Which is a huge vote of confidence in the future of the industry. The delivery schedule runs from 2027 all the way up to 2033. They plan on a decade-long timeline.
And the scale of these new ships is just breathtaking. For Ada, they have 2 on order. They're 150,000 gross tons, carrying over 4,000 passengers, costing $1.3 billion each.
But the really colossal investment is for the main brand, Carnival Cruise Line.
Oh, yeah. They have 3 of these new Project Ace-class ships on order.
How big are we talking?
We are talking 230,000 gross tons, a passenger capacity of 6,200. These will be among the largest passenger ships ever built.
And the price tag.
$1.75 billion for one ship.
Wow. And they're not just bigger, they're technologically different too, right?
Yes. They're designed to run on LNG, liquefied natural gas. That's a huge step towards addressing all the environmental pressure the industry is under.
And I noticed they're naming the new ships after some of their originals, like Carnival Festival and Carnival Tropical.
It's a clever move.
Yeah.
It connects these futuristic megaships back to the brand's origins in the 70s and 80s.
This whole order book just screams confidence. But operating at this scale also means you're exposed to equally high-stakes failures.
And that's where we have to go next. You can't talk about the empire without looking at the major incidents and the deliberate misconduct.
The sources are really clear on this. There's a documented pattern of intentional environmental violations. We're not talking about accidents here. We're talking about fraud.
It goes back quite a ways. In 2002, Carnival Corporation pleaded guilty to criminal charges. The filings confirmed they were falsifying logbooks to cover up the dumping of oily bilge water from 6 of their ships.
And this had been going on for years.
From 1996 to 2001, the penalty was an $18 million fine, but more importantly, they were put on 5 years of court-supervised probation for their entire fleet worldwide.
The fact that a federal court had to step in and monitor them tells you how serious the problem was.
But it got worse, much worse. In 2016, their subsidiary, Princess Cruise Lines, was hit with a $40 million fine.
Which was the largest criminal penalty ever for intentional vessel pollution.
And the details are damning. They were using a so-called magic pipe to bypass their own systems and dump oily waste straight into the ocean. And then they actively lied to cover it up.
And this only came to light because of a whistleblower, right?
Yes. A newly hired engineer saw what was happening, was disgusted by it, and reported it. The practices had been going on from 2005 all the way to 2013.
This suggests a really deep systemic failure of corporate culture.
It absolutely does. You have high-ranking ship officers conspiring to break the law. And even after all that, even while they were on probation, it happened again.
2019.
In 2019, they got hit with another $20 million penalty for violating the probation from the 2016 case.
What were the new violations?
The list is incredible. Discharging plastic into the waters in the Bahamas, more falsified records, and this is the worst part, actively interfering with the court-appointed monitor who was supposed to be helping them fix things.
So even with a federal watchdog on board, they were still trying to get away with it.
It raises a fundamental question about governance, doesn't it? How does a company this huge and this geographically dispersed ensure that the pressure to make a profit doesn't just steamroll basic legal and ethical standards?
And it wasn't just environmental issues. They also had a terrible human tragedy in 2012.
The Costa Concordia. The ship capsized off the coast of Italy.
32 people died.
A terrible, terrible incident. And while the immediate fault lay with the captain, who made a reckless deviation from the course,
the investigation found the company itself was also to blame.
Right. Costa Cruises was fined for what the report called general bad organization. It pointed to systemic problems, a lack of training, and a culture that allowed that kind of recklessness to happen.
And then, as if all that wasn't enough, the entire industry was hit by the ultimate crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic.
An absolutely existential threat. The entire global fleet was forced to stop sailing in March 2020. No revenue, but all the costs of maintaining these massive ships were still there.
The human cost was immediate. 55 passengers on their ships died in those early days.
And the financial bleeding was catastrophic. They had to downsize and fast. In September 2020, they announced they were getting rid of 18 ships.
12% of their entire fleet.
And that number eventually grew to 19. They scrapped ships that had been around for decades, like the Carnival Fantasy.
The financial reports from that time are just brutal.
They are. A net loss of $1.7 billion in just the third quarter of 2020, then another $1.9 billion loss in the fourth quarter.
How did they survive?
Debt. They took on billions in new debt, which is why their equity position is what is today. And they had to delay new ship deliveries, which messed up their whole modernization plan.
But their public response was all about looking forward, focusing on how they could restart safely.
Yes. The CEO at the time was very vocal about universal testing. That was their strategy. They argued that because they could create a controlled bubble on a ship with rigorous testing and quarantines, they could actually offer a safer environment than other types of travel.
And that argument, combined with their ability to raise enough cash to weather the storm, is ultimately what allowed them to survive and get back to building those new megaships we just talked about.
It just shows the incredible extremes they operate between. One minute you're managing a global health crisis, the next you're signing a check for a $2 billion vessel.
The sheer complexity of navigating a company like this is hard to fathom.
It really is.
Yeah.
I think what stands out most from this entire deep dive is just the scale of the ambition. We've talked about the sheer size, a $25 billion operation, and we've decoded that brilliant, complex, dual-listed structure.
A structure that was essentially the trophy they won after that hostile takeover of P&O Princess back in 2003.
And we trace the history from Ted Arison's $1 gamble and that crucial 1987 IPO.
Which funded the shopping spree that led to this incredibly segmented portfolio where you've got Ada for the German market and Cunard for, well, for royalty.
And we had to spend time on the friction points, the deliberate environmental misconduct that led to those huge criminal fines.
The systemic failures that the Costa Concordia disaster exposed, and the incredible resilience they needed to survive a complete industry shutdown.
Before we get to our final thought, it's worth just taking a moment to appreciate the cultural footprint of these brands. I mean, some of the most famous ships in modern history have sailed for them. Oh, absolutely. Think about the Pacific Princess. It was the literal setting for the Love Boat. It defined what cruising meant for an entire generation.
And the Queen Elizabeth II, the QE2. She was the flagship of Cunard when Carnival bought them, the absolute pinnacle of transatlantic travel.
You also have ships with real historical weight, like the Adonia. That was the first cruise ship to sail from the U.S. to Cuba after the embargo.
And the Adora Magic City, from that Chinese joint venture they sold, the first cruise ship ever built in China. That's a huge industrial milestone.
And all those ships, they really lead us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you to think about.
Carnival Corporation in Palak is in this constant balancing act. On one side, you have centuries of maritime heritage they've acquired. On the other, you have the brutal demands of modern corporate strategy, hostile takeovers, complex financial engineering, multi-billion-dollar orders.
And caught in the middle is this ever-growing demand for real, demonstrable safety and environmental accountability.
So it's a question of governance versus growth, right?
It's exactly. Committing $1.75 billion to each of those three new mega ships, planning their investments all the way out to 2033. It's a monumental bet on the future.
But what this deep dive suggests is that the long-term success of this massive floating empire, it doesn't just depend on filling the 6,200 beds on each of those ships.
No. It hinges on whether they can finally prove that their internal compliance and their corporate ethics can actually match the staggering scale of their financial ambition. That is the ultimate test for a global tourism giant.
A truly fascinating look at a company that is so much more than just the sum of its ships. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
We'll see you next time.